Merry Christmas, everybody.
How dare we speak Merry Christmas?
My name is Papa John's, but you'd better call me Boxman. And today I'll be building this big, beautiful German H-class Hutton from Verifier. This one in particular is the H39, the most modest of the H-class designs, and a far cry from the near-mythical, never-built super battleships straight out of Mustache Man's wettest dreams. It's essentially a Bismarck on steroids, with bigger guns, bigger displacement, and a bigger chance of being scrapped on the slipway. 6 of them were planned, 2 of them were started, and none of them were finished. But let's not talk anymore about my channel. This kit was released in 2019 and is Verifier's second ever foray into injection molded plastic kits. Its parts are well packed to protect against disgruntled delivery drivers, and there's only a small fret of optional photo etch in the standard edition, which I'd reckon would make for quite a relaxing out-of-the-box project. I ain't here to relax. To add some extra suffering to this build, I picked up Verifier's comprehensive upgrade set, which includes all sorts of turned brass, photo-etched, and 3D printed parts. It even comes with both a real wooden deck and a masking sheet. Pretty good stuff. I like it. Channel announcements. I've opened Patreon. I've opened YouTube memberships. Follow my socials. Join the Discord. Links in the description. Back to the video. Step 1 of any build should be the bubble bath. The plastic is covered in strange residues from the factory, so it's a good idea to wash everything in warm soapy water. I forgot to do this on my last video, which was probably the reason half the paint got lifted off by masking tape. And though I thought I averted that same disaster, I'll still get screwed for absolutely no reason. You'll see. Wait a second. Who the fuck is that?
Just do that shit, bro. If you want to do it, you can do it. Nobody's stopping you, man. Seriously, stop limiting yourself just because of these worries about what other people think of you. Just stick your finger up your butt, dude, in the shower.
He gets a hole for sunlight. My urges have been satiated, for now, so it's time to glue the hull together. For this, I always use Tamiya's extra thin cement. Together with my brother, Capillary Action, the two form a tag team more diabolical than the plumber and mailman at your mother's house. To get an even stronger bond, I squeeze the halves of the hull together, flooding the seam with melted plastic, which I dip my thumb into for good luck. After a few hours of coating my lungs in a fine plastic dust, the upper and lower halves of the hull are now indistinguishable, as they should have been, if not for those villainous waterline modelers. I've got a bone to pick with those fools who think model boats should have their bottoms cut off simply because they're always hidden by the water. We gotta put an end to boat circumcision, man. Out of sheer spite, I'll be putting as much effort into the lower hull as possible, without exceeding my 75% effort rule, of course. The first additions I make are the ship's 6 underwater torpedo tubes, which are missing from the model. I mainly use a knife to carve them out. Their size, shape, and placement are entirely eyeballed. Once the tubes are big enough, I go in with a round file to widen and smooth them out, sweeping debris away with a disgusting brush. They look pretty badass. A great first victory in our righteous war against the waterliners. Just ignore the fact that one side is a little farther back than the other. I don't know how to measure. Next up is a little sonar thingy in the ship's bow. The Bismarck had one, so I guess the H39 would have one too. I depict it as a notch carved into the hull, with a spare photo-etched ladder placed inside to represent the actual sonar array. It's time for some hull panels. I usually use the masking tape and primer trick, but today I'm feeling very daring. I'm feeling very fire. My instrument of destruction shall be a 0.1-inch scribing tool I got off AliExpress. Yeah, I'm gonna carve the panels by hand. And while you might say,
"Gee, Boxman, that sounds like a bad idea. One slip up and you'll have an irreparable ravine in the ship's hull."
Yeah, I got nothing. Without this special hard tape to guide your tool, hand scribing hull panels wouldn't be possible at all. So it's a great thing that this tape gargles donkey balls. It's a pain in the ass to lay down, and it's a pain in the ass to keep down, thanks to its stiffness, not allowing it to adhere to the curves of the hull. I had to supplement some softer Tamiya masking tape along the bottom of the ship, which went surprisingly well, all things considered. The one saving grace of this method is that you have more control over rendering the vertical separations between hull panels without the need to spray an obscene amount of primer that'd render your meth lab uninhabitable for a week. After only 20 hours, our hull is finally covered in these overscale grooves that only bear a passing resemblance to actual hull panels. And oh boy, am I proud. To evict the pesky little microplastics living within the panel lines, I requisitioned the peculiarly shaped toilet brush from my second side hose husband's bathroom. Its thin bristles, which I deem perfect for polishing porcelain, proving practical in purging plastic particles promptly. We need one more slam dunk victory to defeat the pro-boat circumcisionist waterliners once and for all. Rivets. These are water slide decals with a 3D rivet texture on them, intended for 1/72nd scale aircraft. Because late German battleships like Bismarck were both welded and riveted, I add the rivets sparingly, but apart from the occasional glance at a real photograph, I'm not gonna lie, I mostly made this shit up. The last things I'll add to the hull for now are the rudders, which I cut out using some fancy god hand nippers. The rudders themselves are fixed using flexible superglue, which will prevent them from being snapped off by a group of vicious, low-flying biplanes that somehow cheated their way past the superior German-engineered Überblitzkrieg Superschlachtschiff. That's German for big-ass boat. I figured now would be appropriate for me to open the instructions booklet for the first time. I guess I'll gnaw on them big turreters first. The upgrade set has a separate little booklet, so you gotta pay attention to what parts need replacing. It's a bit of a juggling act I'm definitely not used to, since I'd prefer to throw it all in the trash. I start by assembling the main turrets using only the default plastic parts, but there's actually not much stuff to replace. Verifier offers some 3D printed canvas blast bag replacements, but there's no improvements in detail. There's a bit of a layer shift error in the print, and it's much harder to have the guns pointed at a 0-degree elevation. For those reasons, I'll stick with the OG blast bags. All they need is some light mold line cleanup and a brutal gun circumcision, because Verifier also offers some brass gun barrels that are nice enough for me to take without question. Like and subscribe if you also regret getting recently circumcised. I ended up using the 3D printed blast bags on the aftmost turret, since I'll need their higher elevation to clear the aircraft catapult. With that, I attached the rest of the turret accessories using copious amounts of superglue, and oh boy, does it look not very good at all. I thought superglue debonder was gonna save me, but I forgot that God abandoned me a long time ago. Or something along those lines. All that did was slightly eat away at the plastic parts. Whoops, it's time to glue down the ship's main deck. I'll pretend I didn't see the gap in the stern, and instead shift my focus to the nose, which is bent upwards for some strange reason I wouldn't happen to know. I mean, come on, it's an act of God. I use a hammer to lightly smash the broken nose back into place. There's still a little blood on it from that homeless guy. With a little bit of putty to fill the gap, we're as good as new. I'm gonna keep chucking my model kit boxes, thank you very much. Capillary action, capillary action, capillary action, capillary action. The inconsiderate main deck covered up our prisoner's sunlight hole, so I'll drill him a new one. I now proceed with securing the primary turrets to the model. It's a well-known fact that I like to play around with my model battleships on the living room floor, so I use magnets to keep the turrets secure so that they don't go flying when the guests trip over me on their way to the dining room. Consider everything up to this point as the appetizer. Now's time we choke to death on the main course. To build up my tolerance to photo etch, I figured I'd start with the railings along the main deck, but I soon learned the flaw in my logic. One cannot come to tolerate photo etch in the same way one cannot come to tolerate bullets by shooting themselves with progressively larger bullets. I did, however, pick up a little tidbit of wisdom I'd like to share with y'all. Come closer. Bending photo-etched railings is no different than itching your balls. You only need two techniques, the pinch and roll and the far more painful scratch and drag. Remember this, and you'll be able to create all kinds of wacky curves if you're ever unfortunate enough to be working with photo etch. With the railings done, I take a quick minute to add various miscellaneous details to the first level of the superstructure. Vents, ladders, aircraft hangar doors, and RTX 5090s. With that, we're ready to move on to the ship's upper works. I'm really impressed by the engineering of this main apartment block piece. It may not be much, but if this were a mid-2000s Peter Trump kit, it would have been a sub-assembly consisting of about 400 parts. Well done, Verifire. I actually thought the photo etch on this segment was quite easy, perhaps even being a little fun. Maybe I was wrong about photo etch. Maybe it isn't all bad. I was then shot in the back of the head 40 times by these gas pipes. I was definitely right. The problem with these pipes is that they have very few, very small contact points for superglue to grab onto. If your first instinct is to apply some glue, hold the parts close together, and hope for the best, welcome to the club. I see we're both mentally impaired. But unlike you, I found a solution. Eventually. Simply tape the ends of the pipe in place and apply glue to the exposed connection points via a piece of wire or scrap plastic, and bam. It wasn't all smooth sailing, but this certainly got the job done. The pipes were prone to getting knocked off, and it happened a few times during building. Are these things even pipes? They might be railings. That's the apartment complex, done and dusted. But before I could continue erecting the ship's superstructure, I was attacked by a foul beast. With only superglue accelerator in hand, I had no option but to let loose on the poor bastard. And in just a matter of seconds, Dylan was gone. 这玩意儿闻起来、尝起来都像棉花糖，但对我这种猛兽来说一点用都没有。有懂化学的朋友知道这是什么原因吗？能不能把它提取出来给人类用？ I initially placed the carcass of the slain beast in the middle of the ship's bridge, but his gluttony sickened me. So I beheaded him and put his body in one of the turrets. The rest of the ship's superstructure is more of the same railings, vents, ladders, and pipes from before. It all stacks up like the layers of a grotesque insect-infested cake, but I'll refrain from gluing them together, along with the anti-aircraft guns and other equipment, to make painting the model easier. It was at this point that I became privy to literally all of the hull railings wrinkling up. I assumed they chose to do this for no other reason than to fuck with me, so I had no choice but to spend some time melting the superglue away and reapplying all the railings from scratch. Sometimes this hobby makes me feel so happy and relaxed. Sometimes. Now I move on to the ship's two funnels, which are what sets the H-39 apart from its otherwise visually identical predecessors. I swear I'm not being racist. German battleships really be passing down the same three traits over and over, and that's okay. My family tree of inbred meatheads is the same. I start by going through all the usual motions: gluing, sanding, filling gaps, sanding again, sealing dead insects within. But then I start to diverge. The walls of the mini chimneys on top of the funnel are too thick for this scale, so I thin them down by spinning my knife around for a bit. The same ailment has befallen these spotlight sponsons, whose plastic walls are a little too thick for my liking. Luckily, Verifire allows you to hide them, so I'll go ahead and do just that. What follows is more of the same photo etch pieces we saw on the forward superstructure, so let's do a few jump cuts just to convey the moderate effort I put into this assembly before moving on. A welcome addition in Verifire's upgrade set is this brass mast. Not only does it look way better than the original plastic one, but it's also immune to the accidental bumps and scrapes that even pro modelers like myself are all too familiar with. To wrap up the dry assembly portion of this build, I blitzkrieg my way through what I can only describe as a forest of seemingly unrelated Shipley objects. We got these garden hose-looking things, lifeboat storage racks, cranes. These were a pain in the ass to put together. The aircraft catapult, the aircraft, one with its wings mutilated, and a bunch of secondary guns, one of which has a cracked blast bag and a lost gun barrel that was vaporized upon landing on my garage floor. As always, none of this stuff is actually glued down, because that just ain't how you build model boats. So let's get some cool spinny shots of the completed assembly before taking the whole thing apart and moving on to painting. Verifire gives us two choices for paint schemes: baby blue and baby blue zebra. I'm not a fan of either, so the instructions sheet has now outlived its usefulness. Instead, I'm gonna be using the battleship Tirpitz's final 1944 paint scheme as a reference. It's nice, simple, and requires no masking around the stupid little pipes, which I am not mentally prepared for at this moment. With the hull fully primed, it's time for the first layer of paint. I played around with chipping fluid on this dismembered Titanic hull, and I found it very useful for heavy weathering effects. I know chipping is quite popular among tank and plane modelers, but as far as I'm aware, I'll be the first shipbuilder on YouTube to pretend to have invented this technique. The first layer represents the fouled up hull that will be partially revealed when the uppermost layer of paint is chipped away. I cook up a proprietary mix of pale red and gently spray it in an uneven fashion in order to sell the decrepit look. After poor SpongeBob gets the old cartel treatment, I then use his remains to dab the hull with various shades of brown. Now for the chipping fluid. The more severe your desired chipping effect, the heavier your coat should be. I'll err on the side of caution and just flood the entire surface with this stuff. It looks wrong, it probably is wrong, but ain't nobody gonna tell me otherwise, including you. Tell me I'm right. After about an hour of drying time, I returned to coat the hull in a deeper, more saturated red, making sure to spray a light, translucent coat to reduce the contrast between the top and bottom layers. You'll need some water to activate the chipping fluid and a brush to scrub the top coat of paint away. I opted for a stiff paintbrush, which turned out to be a little too great at chipping large chunks of paint in one fell stroke. The hull's looking a lot more beat up and neglected than I envisioned, but that's all right. We learn to roll with the punches, as will it. Now, if you're almost as smart as I am, you'll wait about 24 hours for the paint and chipping fluid to cure completely to avoid any paint peeling mishaps. That's because you're beholden to the illusion of order. You're a slave. While you sit around waiting, playing it safe, I'm out here making moves. Applying masking tape and painting my upper hull with an opaque layer of Tamiya's German gray. You fool. Our little chipping adventure hasn't stopped at just the lower hull. You ever notice how battleships in photos have this speckled look to their upper hulls? I'll attempt to recreate that by applying a lighter color atop and chipping most of it away. The key is low contrast. If your lighter tone is too bright, it'll stand out and look very unnatural. Sadly, I just kept adding more and more light gray to my paint because I couldn't tell if it was bright enough, like when frogs can't tell they're being boiled alive or something. The lesson here is that when it comes to color theory, never ever trust your gut. And that sometimes it's okay to play it safe, even if we don't like to admit it. After seeing all the spots that somehow got stripped down to bare plastic by the masking tape, I don't feel so great about applying even more masking tape to paint the ship's black boot stripe. Uh-oh. Rather than using an airbrush, I decide to paint the stripe by hand. Since a pristine boot stripe would look strange on this heavily weathered hull, for the first time in my career, I'm doing everything wrong on purpose. My brush is too stiff, my paint is too thick, and my strokes are too uneven. Yo Mama performance review. I definitely could have gone a little sparser with my brush strokes, as the boot stripe's borders are still quite sharp. If you look closely, you'll also notice subtle grooves caused by the overly thick paint, which I'm thinking will be filled in by algae later. It'll be great, bro, trust me. What's up, Beijing?
What's up, Beijing?
My name is Papa John's, but you'd better call me Boxman. Today, I'm done with that stupid paint-peeling ass boat. Who needs that? Let's build this 1/35th scale ZTZ 99 tank from Hobby Boss.
Bobby Hoss.
For those of you who've seen my old community posts, I started this thing back in June 2024, but I lost interest, as tanks aren't usually my thing. Let me go through what I've done so far for a quick refresh. I completed the suspension, the upper hull assembly, and I must have just started to do the tracks. Great, I guess I'll pick up from there. Oh, and because I want to show off my level 5 Duolingo, I'll narrate the rest of the build in Chinese. Hope you don't mind. 这玩意儿闻起来、尝起来都像棉花糖，但对我这种猛兽来说一点用都没有。有懂化学的朋友知道这是什么原因吗？能不能把它提取出来给人类用？谢了。这玩意儿闻起来、尝起来都像棉花糖，但对我这种猛兽来说一点用都没有。
有懂化学的朋友知道这是什么原因吗？
In truth, I have no idea why so much paint got stripped away, and this shit deeply upset me. What's worse is that I'll have to use Tamiya paint by hand, along with whatever this thing is called. I'm not saying it. Well, no use crying over spilled milk. After patching up the paint job as best as I can, I move on to adding water slide decals to the hull. There aren't any hull markings provided in the kit, and I really wanted some depth gauge markers. So I spent $10 for these aftermarket decals intended for the Scharnhorst. These guys are much tougher than usual, as not even an aggressive chemical solution could get them to settle down. I even had to cut them up with a knife just to get them to listen to me. And then I went home and applied a gloss clear coat to protect my decals. With that out of the way, it's time for the deck. I'm feeling a little lazy, so I'd like to try out one of these wooden deck stickers to see what all the fuss is about. As mentioned before, Verifier does provide a wooden deck, and while it's quite decent, I was for some reason fixated on the fact that it is split in the middle. I just had to buy a new one. Enter Hunter. I had long forgotten that this was the chucklehead who made that masking sheet I used in the hood video. In terms of looks, his deck looks excellent. The details are really sharp. Its thickness is really thin. What's not to love?
I'll tell you what.
This buffoon hunter wouldn't know manufacturing tolerance if he was told to step into a human-sized blender. Everything's cut with the assumption that you have micron-level precision, which is just bonkers. The main deck was a little tight, but not too bad. You gotta apply it like a screen protector, gradually peeling away the plastic backing sheet to expose the sticky side. But when I got to the superstructure decks, they became unusable. I had to swap in some of Verifier's decks, which had the perfect amount of spacing for a comfortable fit. The difference in shape between the two manufacturers speaks volumes. Verifier is accommodating and friendly, while this Hunter asshole just wants to have his way with you. Get out of here. The great thing about real wooden decks is that you can actually stain them. For this purpose, I'll use this Tamiya brown wash because I can just wipe it away when I cause any accidents. It would have been easier for me to apply the wash before I applied the deck, but I was worried that it would affect the adhesive. That's the big reason why I've always been hesitant to use a wooden sticker. You don't know how long until it starts peeling off. I haven't had a good night's rest in months just thinking about it. My deck is looking good, but the hull ain't so bad either. We're gonna leave the hull behind for now and give the other parts of this boat some love. These are the H-39's primary turrets, which mount a total of 8 16-inch guns, putting this German supership on par with the cutting-edge warships of the post-war era. The first one, not the second. I thought it would be cool for the lower turrets to have red rooftops, while the higher ones have red gun barrels. Identification markings so that the RAF can more effectively bomb the ship as it's holed up in Norway. Jokes aside, I was thinking, I need a backstory for my original character. Some alt history lore for this Big Bertha. I suppose the point of divergence in this world would be Germany unlocking black magic naval construction techniques. Mustache Man gets what he wants, and the 6 H-class battleships of his greatest nocturnal emissions are brought into this world by mid-1941.
But Boxman,
You may so rudely interrupt.
if the Germans have the fleet of their dreams to challenge the Royal Navy, why would their battleships still be stuck in Norway, as in our timeline? I'll tell you what.
Considering this alternate timeline allows for black magic naval construction, the Soviets are now running around with 16 Sovietsky Soyuzes. I think black magic is just meth. Now I'm finishing up all the small little details I've been procrastinating on. These low anti-aircraft guns are relatively simple compared to the horrors of the 40mm Bofors or the Japanese Type 96, and yet they still push the limits of my vision and patience. On the other hand, these lifeboats were surprisingly somewhat enjoyable. Granted, they need to undergo a series of pretty gruesome cosmetic procedures with plenty of amputation and disemboweling to go around, but each and every one of them comes out with a new lease on life. Just look at that stunning before and after. Oh yeah, do it 10 more times, please. We've all dropped our fair share of irreplaceable model parts into the fourth dimension, but have you ever wondered how you could get them back? The answer to that question may lie in this funny Japanese stuff I bought off eBay. You put it in boiling water to create a mold of whatever part you want to duplicate. For me, I lost one of the ship's capstans, so I'll try making a copy of that. But I also threw in a spare Bismarck turret just for fun. Once the mold has fully solidified, you're going to want to open it up and shove a bunch of putty inside before closing it shut again. Leave that to harden up overnight, and if you did it just like me, in the morning you'll be greeted with the saddest looking castings you'll ever see. I reckon it's time to go back to the drawing board. I got a little carried away and ended up 3D printing a few extra things. Number one is this fancy nameplate. Thanks to the guy in the Draconifel Discord server who pointed out that the V shouldn't be capitalized. It says Ulrich von Hutten. I can't help but think of a certain American pizza chain. Apparently the name was considered by Mustache Man, though simultaneously this stereotypical German typeface was banned by the Nazis. The law of equivalent exchange. Besides the capstans, the rest of this print is made up of some extra 57mm anti-aircraft guns, some gun tubs, and why the hell not? I threw a few mice in there as well. For how massive the mouse is, it's amazing to see it so small in 1/700th scale. Look at that little guy, he couldn't hurt a Dylan. I'll put those parts in my inventory for now and get back to the task at hand. Although the main deck didn't need any masking, the other decks still do. The only way to accomplish this is by manually placing somewhere in the ballpark of 3,627 individual pieces of masking tape. And yes, this is the piece that Hunter tried to touch inappropriately earlier. My footage is out of order. The upper superstructure is painted in light gray, and I've done as much as I can to minimize the amount of masking needed. Besides not gluing the sub-assemblies together, that also includes painting individual parts separately, such as these red floor pieces. Forget fancy weathering techniques. As long as you're able to cleanly paint the ship's various colors, you're already 95% of the way to a great build. Less is more often than not, and not less often than more. This is Editor Boxman talking, by the way. Past Boxman clearly did not follow this advice. Please remember this, future Boxman, along with the random kids watching. Before continuing with my aforementioned weathering, I take some time to touch up imperfections in the paint job and to pick out any details that couldn't be airbrushed. I think this is the first time I ever bothered to paint the life preservers. Don't correct me if I'm wrong. If you're a troglodyte like me, hand painting usually devolves into a death circle of touching up mistakes you made while touching up mistakes. I nearly starved to death while trying to fix the ship's dual-purpose turrets. It was not pretty. Neither were they. Neither are you. Sorry. I'm sure you have a great model boats collection. When all base coats are finalized, I seal everything in a protective glossy clear coat. My first step to weathering, as always, is the black panel wash. And no matter how many times I keep telling myself that this time I'll hold back, that this time I'll only apply it to detailed dense surfaces, I still end up slathering the stuff over the entire model. For blending, I use AK White Spirit, It's good against enamels, oils, and small children, and doesn't have any effect on acrylics. In theory, you should be using it to create a gradient towards areas with panel liner, but what I'm doing here is basically smearing everything around and creating a dark soot filter. To counteract this, I bring forth my crushed dreams of becoming a semi-amateur painter on the streets of Vienna, whose work is best defined by its cold disinterest in the human form. By sporadically dotting oil paints over the entire model, not only do I suppress my desires to get into extreme politics, but I also create the illusion of highlights and subtle discoloration with the help of a dry paintbrush for blending. Can you believe I spent like 20 bucks on this crappy 3D printed ship stand? I own a 3D printer, for Christ's sake. Anyway, I pulled it out to weather the hull because I wanted to feel like I was getting my money's worth. I used black oil paints to make dark vertical streaks, mostly focusing on the portholes because that felt about right. Next up is everyone's favorite, rust. This stuff tends to form in places with increased wear and tear, like near anchors and the little thingies that have ropes tied around them when the ship is in port. If anybody happens to know what they're called, don't be a smart aleck and keep those thoughts to yourself. After some light rust on the superstructure, it is finally ready to be permanently married to the hull using a few drops of super glue. I must have taken them apart 1,000 times throughout the build. Gluing the sub-assemblies is always a little nerve-wracking. If your hand slips and you get super glue everywhere, you're done. If your hand slips and you crush the model, you are done. If you forgot to dry fit your parts and already put some glue down only to find out nothing's fitting, you can kiss your ass goodbye. For those reasons, I'm usually only pretending when I glue things down on camera. Don't worry, I'm not playing when it comes to the 3D printed parts from earlier, or the anchor chain, which is real and made of metal. Thankfully, Fire provides a lot more length than you actually need, because, as I mentioned earlier, I don't know how to measure. I play it safe on the second attempt and go extra long. Now my anchor's dangling in the open breeze, which seems awfully risky. Can any sex offenders in the comments fact check that? I thought I said nobody likes a smart aleck. After that impromptu montage, I apply some soot to the funnels, as well as to the part of the mast where wind would blow the funnel smoke towards, and the guns, which implies some kind of recent battle. Next, I mix up some green oil paints for algae on the ship's underside, leaving the paint just long enough for it to still await my return before coming back with a cotton swab dipped in oil thinner, lightly dabbing it around the hull, and removing most of it. The rough texture left by my unusual painting process provides shelter for a lucky few paint particles to hide in. With that ordeal tidied up, I reveal the extent of my procrastination by admitting that no, I have not painted the numerous mini vehicles that this ship is host to. I guess I've saved the worst for last. Though I am happy to report that, at least according to my own standards, I'm not awful at hand painting anymore. I even think I did a decent job on these boats. Was feeling pretty fancy with these lil paddles. And now it's the mice's turn to be painted. I decide to give one the giraffe camouflage scheme, while the other one gets a red oxide turret. Giraffe ended up looking better, so that's who I permanently shackled to the build. I'll quickly gloss over applying the final clear coat, as well as the rigging process. I wasn't in a great mood and I couldn't see anything, so it regrettably ended up being quite minimal. Hopefully my vision magically gets better for the next one. As we all know, the eyes are a muscle that gets stronger over time. I should also check my home for another gas leak. I had a whole bunch of leftover signal flags from Ravel's Bismarck. Too bad I genuinely destroyed each and every one of them. After a long and hard build, it's time to see how Verifire's 1/700 scale H-Class Hutton measures up on the Boxman Dick scale. Of course, I'll only be rating the plastic parts to be fair to my past builds. Detail, 7.5 out of 10. The raw detail is slightly better than a kit from Peter Trump, though Verifire's engineering is far superior, as seen with the superstructure block and the hull shape around the propellers. Interesting to build, 9.2 out of 10. The kit was easy and fun to put together. It is also the only injection molded kit of the H-Class at this scale. Peter Trump was going to try his hand at it, but he backed out. Womp womp. Craftsmanship, 9.7 out of 10. There weren't any manufacturing defects in any of the plastic parts. Keenness, penis, 9 out of 10. All parts have razor-sharp edges and fit together nicely without any hassle. The only thing worth mentioning is a minor perimeter gap in the stern deck. That all adds up to 35.4 out of 40, or an 88.5% on the D.I.C.K scale, an exceptionally high score on the most prestigious and rigorous scoring system known to the model boats community. It's time for another battleship size comparison. This sorry collection of toy boats represents the absolute peak of my model making prowess. It's been a wild ride, one 8-hour deck masking job at a time. Bismarck is not in good shape. I left the poor fella out on my living room table where he got crushed under a rolled-up yoga mat, but I repaired the worst of the damage for the hood video. Next up is Yamato. Yamato is not in good shape. The radar is broken on account of being crushed by a rolled-up yoga mat, among other battle wounds. I'm already looking into a replacement. Stay tuned. Here's Kremlin, also known as Project 24, also known as the Tomb of Dylan. Unfortunately, this sacred relic took the brunt of the impact from that rolled-up yoga mat. We gotta ban rolled-up yoga mats, man. Littorio is doing fine and well, though Titanic seems to have been split in half by a rolled-up yoga mat. We gotta kill rolled-up yoga mats, man. And finally, here's Hood. Hood's hat fell off, not because of the rolled-up yoga mat, but because I accidentally knocked it. We gotta destroy all yoga mats right fucking now. I never want to touch another boat ever again, but I probably will. I'm Papa John's, and this has been Boxman Builds. Good luck playing GTA 6, and have fun surviving World War III. Bye-bye.